Hey guys, it's Robert from Owlempires.com. In this tutorial or walkthrough, however you want to call it, I would like to show you around how I achieved this particular render. It's a S63 Merc and it was rendered with Corona. Now, I don't want to go into extremely deep details because I don't want to make 40-minute videos, so I will just try to run through everything and try not to forget about any bigger detail. So let's start with the backplate. The backplate was shot in Italy. I shot it with a quite old Canon camera. It's a 12 megapixel camera, so the quality was not the best. The clarity is quite poor, but still, as you can see, pretty usable. So let's take a look at it. This was the raw image. Now, a few things to notice: lines, signs, poles, whatever, cracks. They're all just really annoying in a backplate, so you want to get rid of all of those. And that was pretty much it. What really bothered me. I knew that I will add a motion blur, so the image clarity is not going to be that big of a problem. So let's start. When I imported the raw image, it was a raw file. This is the simple JPEG. I imported it to camera raw filter. In camera raw filter, I took care of the lens distortion. That's basically that small curve that you can see on the sides of the image, and the chromatic aberration that was quite high with this camera. But all that got fixed, and after that I don't have that particular layer anymore, but I basically clone stamped out every bothering details, as you can see here. I also added some minimal color correction to make it a bit more blue. I never wanna go all the way with the color correction because I like to just post-process that with the render in it already. Now that's pretty much what I did. Yeah, with the motion blur, as you know, motion blur goes by distance. So like a mountain like this is most likely not going to get blurred, yet everything that's like close to the camera, that's this part here, that's going to get extremely blurred. And it was quite a job with this part, because you need the fence to be blurred, but you want this mountain in the background to be clear without having any blur, or even if you add a blur, only some really minimal. So I basically had to mask out all this fence. Then with the clone stamp I would fill back the everything that's behind the fence. So I would add all green trees, everything all the way through. Next would be adding a motion blur to the road, pretty much as a gradient, so I didn't want to have any blur towards the end, even though the image is gonna get cropped. But that was the basic idea, as you can see here. Front part really blurry, at the back less blur, mountains untouched. And yeah, that's pretty much everything you should know about the backplate. Alright, let's run through the 3ds Max part really fast. Things you should know: first of all, your backplate should always match your height and width, basically your output size for the rendered image. That's a step 1. Step 2 that I do, I never really mess with these, with the tone mapping. I really only touch it while I'm actually setting up the materials, maybe, or I just cannot see the dark spot, and well, basically then I mess with the exposure, or maybe I pump up the contrast if I want to see approximately what my car paint is going to look like after post-processing it in Photoshop. Other than that, I like to keep it default. So basically when I export my image, that image and its backplate is going to be a perfect match for the actual backplate before getting imported to 3ds Max. Something else, shutter speed. I set the shutter speed to 1, and I usually add a 360-degree rotation to the wheels forward. So basically when I put this to 50 frames, I put it to 50 frames because it's basically the animation is like coming in easy and then goes out easy, and around the middle part is the fastest. You can manage the curve so it's linear, but it's just easier to like set it to 50 and then manage it with the shutter speed. This basically gives me the perfect rotation in this case, and it just looks perfect. As you can see, the backplate already has the motion blur. By the way, the reason why I do that before rendering the actual image, so I don't have to do it with the shadows already on it. If you add a motion blur and you have shadows on it, that's just a nightmare. Your shadows are basically gonna disappear or become super soft, and that's just not how things work. Your shadow moves together with your vehicle. In this case, the camera is running at the same speed as the vehicle, so you really need everything blurred except your car shadow and the really far mountains. Now, render elements. I don't really use the elements to compose my image. However, in this case I wanted to reflect elements, so I knew I always have some issues with white car paints, and in this case if it was too soft I could just add the reflect element over it and just fine-tune it in Photoshop, so-called. Word position. The word position I usually only add it if I think that I might add something to the scene, like a banner or anything. The word position gives me some great lines that I can guide myself after, perspective wise. ID, pretty basic, alpha and albedo. Albedo was mainly added to check the white, if it's too white or not. Everything was all set. Now, as you can see, the ground plane is a simple shadow catcher. I have screen project onto geometry, always transparent, so I won't have the ground plane in the alpha elements, and I have shadow amount of 2. I just like to use 2, and that's pretty much it. It's a super simple scene. The car paint is pretty much overly simple as well. As you can see, it's a simple blend managed with the base coat. It's quite matte white with Corona ambient occlusion added to the diffuse and reflection, so I get a really nice depth on the sides. A clear coat and a bump added to that clear coat. If you look at cars in real life, you can see that the clear coat is always a bit bumpy, so that just simulates a really nice realism. And all this separated with a fall off in a blend material, and that's pretty much it. Everything else is pretty standard. The driver and color correction is going to happen up next. Alright, final steps. First of all, when exporting from 3ds Max, I usually export as a 32-bit EXR. 32-bit images are just great. They have a huge range, a long range to change the exposure, and that comes in super handy sometimes. So that's what I did. However, after a while, when I know that I don't have to correct reflections and such things, I turn them into 16 bits, because on 32 bits you cannot really work with every single tool in 3ds Max, in Photoshop, sorry, and that can get a bit annoying after a while. So it was turned to 16 bits, and what I did next is run it through Camera Raw filter. I honestly love Camera Raw filter for post-processing. There are so many tools that you can use and basically fine-tune your image however you want. And as an addition, you can even save presets, so you don't have to redo it again and again and again, and that just comes in handy, especially when I'm making test renders. They are usually default full HD resolution, and I can just make a preset, see what it looks like. If I like it, I can just render it in 4K or 6K or whatever resolution I'm running, and just reapply the preset that I already made on a full HD image. It's super cool. So basically this is what my image looked like. I think that I already cropped it, and I filled in this part. The whole composition was a bit off, and the vehicle was too on the center and looked a bit floaty, so I wanted to move it like on this corner somehow. And when I'm looking at it right now, it feels really comfortable for my eyes. As you can see, the lines basically frame the vehicles really nicely, and yeah, this is basically how it's going to stay. Now, you should know that I rendered multiple coats. I rendered matte white, I rendered pearl white, overly reflective, and all that. And I will end up composing all those to make the car paint how I really like it, how it really stands out in this image. So that was the first coat. It basically, like, I believe this was just like a more desaturated coat. Alright, next comes the side reflections. Now, I shot this backplate, so I know for a fact that behind me was nothing but mountains and trash. Yet the window looked too flat, so I decided to basically just add a sort of a mountain side or mountain top on it, and this really like just kicks up your render. Looks a lot more professional. Not every case, but in this case I just loved it. Some alignment. I ended up a bit darkening the interior, added in the lights. It was a public road, so most likely the car will have the lights on, even in real life. This was followed by the glimmer. If you add these, they are quite easy to make. You can just draw it by yourself with a brush, or download some sort of a pack. You can do it either way. It's super easy. What you want to take care of is don't add too many of them. If you add it to every single corner, the render starts to look really weird, and you really don't want that. As you can see, I added it just on a few spots on the grill and on the basically on the wheel caps. That I found that was enough. It's not too visible, but still visible. Yeah, this is another reflection on the windshield. It's a studio reflection, not the best, but I still felt that it's a good match for this image. This was followed by the driver. Drivers were always a pain for me to add. I have quite a few stock image of drivers and basically humans, but they just never match. I don't know honestly what's the deal with that. They never want to match, and I got kind of lucky with this image, because this pillar is just blocking the seat, the front part of the seat, so I can just add any human there and it looks decent. Caustics. I rendered caustics with manta ray. Corona right now does not support caustics or reflective caustics, so it was a must to do them in manta ray. However, I toned down the opacity quite a lot because somehow it just like draw focus from the car, and that's not what I wanted. So I have the opacity, the overall opacity of the caustics on 25%. However, I have 3 maps, I believe. I have the right side, the front, and I have it on the fence as well, though they are just barely visible. Alright, here comes another coat that I added. This is a more matte. It gives a really nice depth here on the bottom, and I just ended up loving that. Yet I like how it looks, but it was just really missing a strong reflection, and I basically added the reflect element that I exported previously, and there you go. That's pretty much it. It was a simple scene. I honestly merged a few of the layers already, but you get the idea. There's not too many things made or done on this image, and that's pretty much it. I really hope that you enjoyed it and you were able to gather some information that might be useful for you in the future. See you guys next time.